My name is Emily, age 44, and I'm employed as a TV broadcaster. Alongside me is my husband Tom, also 44, who manages a photography studio. Our journey began in high school, where we became each other's first and only significant other. The path to marriage was natural, as if destiny had woven our lives together seamlessly. At 25, tragedy struck when I lost my parents in an accident. In the aftermath, Tom's unwavering support was a lifeline, solidifying his place as not just a husband but a familial anchor. Post-nuptials, Tom relocated to my childhood home, a sanctuary left behind by my parents, where I found solace in our shared space. Our union bore fruit with the arrival of our son, bringing immense joy into our lives. Tom proved to be the epitome of an egalitarian partner, seamlessly balancing household responsibilities and childcare, a testament to his commitment to our shared goals. Yet, amidst our bliss, a shadow loomed in the form of my mother-in-law Jen. She couldn't reconcile with the sight of Tom, a man, taking charge of domestic duties. Reflecting on an incident a decade past, when our son was just beginning elementary school, Jen's presence escalated. With the transition from nursery to elementary school came logistical challenges, prompting us to rely on her assistance in ferrying our son home. Her frequent visits coincided with her husband Steve's retirement, affording them both ample free time. Jen, a staunch traditionalist, had embraced the role of homemaker while Steve was less inclined towards household chores. Whenever Tom found himself in the kitchen, effortlessly whipping up meals, Jen's disapproval lingered audibly in muttered phrases like, "A man's place isn't in the kitchen," or nostalgic remarks about how their generation wouldn't conceive of such occurrences. Upon my initial visit to their home, Jen wasted no time in expressing her expectation for me to relinquish my career aspirations, firmly rooted in her belief that women should prioritize homemaking. My role as a glamorous broadcaster seemed to irk her, contrasting sharply with her worldview. Yet Tom, who had witnessed my passion for broadcasting since our high school days, remained steadfast in his support for my ambitions. Likewise, I championed his pursuit of photography, and our symbiotic collaboration felt organic and effortless. Navigating the challenges of nursery school proved to be a joint effort, but the transition to elementary school brought unexpected hurdles, particularly with after-school care proving less accommodating. This compelled us to lean on Jen's assistance more heavily. As she began to frequent our home, her critiques of household tasks became a common refrain. Despite Tom's nonchalant responses defending our division of labor, Jen persisted in voicing her disapproval, often behind my back. Yet, recognizing her invaluable help, I chose to endure her comments in silence, opting not to engage in confrontation. Despite her traditional values, Jen had a surprising affinity for modern conveniences. Proudly brandishing her smartphone, she boasted of being the sole owner among her peers, reveling in the ease of access it provided. "I'm ahead of the curve," she proclaimed, enthusiastically exploring the internet for various purposes. "Look at how simple it is to do things now," she remarked, advocating for the adoption of convenient tools. Embracing the digital age, she efficiently utilized online platforms for tasks like restaurant reservations and service bookings. However, Jen's embrace of modernity seemed selective when it came to our family's shopping habits. Disapproving of our reliance on a delivery service for weekly grocery orders, she voiced her dissent with comments like, "You should handle the shopping yourself," and lamented the perceived wastefulness of delivery fees. Yet, her tune changed upon discovering the option to order groceries online. Encouraging me to embrace this newfound convenience, she eagerly advocated for the abandonment of outdated paper forms, highlighting the benefits of digital shopping. During evenings when Jen lingered at our home while Tom and I prepared dinner, she often cited the need to return for Steve's meal, emphasizing his inability to dine alone. Steve's aversion to household tasks was evident, leaving Jen to shoulder the domestic burden. Curious about Tom's contrasting approach, I once questioned him about his cooperative attitude towards chores, given his upbringing. Tom's response shed light on his determination to avoid the same complaints his mother had voiced about his father's lack of involvement. It was a lesson learned through observation of negative patterns. Jen's frustration with her husband's reluctance to contribute to household chores was palpable, contrasting with her bemusement at her son's willingness to pitch in. Perplexed by her seemingly contradictory stance, I suspected that Jen found solace in airing grievances, prompting me to maintain a cautious distance. Little did I know at the time, Jen's mounting frustrations would eventually lead her to take drastic actions, such as selling our house without consent, revealing the depths of her desperation. That summer brought an exciting opportunity when my company extended an invitation for a 2-month business trip abroad to cover a sports broadcast at the World Championship. It was a rare chance that felt like the culmination of my hard work and dedication. Recognizing the significance of this opportunity, I turned to Tom for guidance. Amidst his own commitments, he expressed uncertainty about managing both work and caring for our son John. It was then that Jen, who had been quietly listening, stepped in with an offer to assist. Despite lingering reservations from past encounters, the absence of alternative options left me with little choice but to entrust John's care to Jen. While considering the option of having Tom and John stay with Tom's parents, we realized the logistical challenges of commuting to school from their location. Ultimately, we settled on the arrangement of Jen staying at our home during weekdays to provide care for John. With this plan in motion, I embarked on my business trip, fully immersing myself in the sportscasting work and achieving significant strides in my career. Exhausted and relieved to be back in the U.S., I trudged towards my home on a weekday afternoon, burdened by the weight of my suitcase. As I approached the entrance, I was met by Jen, who seemed oddly eager. Prepared to express my gratitude for her assistance during my absence, I was blindsided by her unexpected declaration. "This house sold for $300,000, so I'm taking the full amount." Stunned, I struggled to process her words. "Our house?" I questioned incredulously, hoping for some clarification. With a gleam in her eyes, Jen affirmed, "Yes, this house. Well, actually, we don't technically own it." Her sudden backtrack only added to my confusion, prompting me to question the authenticity of her claim. However, Jen dismissed my doubts with laughter, insisting on the validity of her statement and brandishing the registration certificate as evidence. As she stood there, arms crossed and seemingly victorious, I realized that reasoning with her would be futile. Deciding to change tactics, I attempted to redirect the conversation. "Let's set that aside for a moment. Why are you selling it?" I inquired, hoping for some semblance of explanation. With a nonchalant air, Jen declared, "What belongs to the wife belongs to the husband, and therefore to me. I'm using it to build a new house." Her rationale, though flawed, hinted at a deeper agenda, leaving me grappling with a sense of disbelief and betrayal. As Jen's words echoed in the air, her bloodshot eyes filled me with a creeping sense of unease. The notion of a new house, one that belonged to both my husband and me, suddenly seemed tainted with a sinister undertone. Her resolve was palpable as she outlined her intentions, driven by a misguided sense of obligation to shield Tom from household chores. "I've raised him not to engage in such tasks, and I won't allow him to do so in the future," she declared with unwavering conviction. As the pieces of the puzzle fell into place, it became clear that Jen's perception of Tom's role in our household had been distorted from the beginning. A simple act of solidarity, when Tom had insisted on sharing household responsibilities shortly after our marriage, had been misconstrued by Jen. In her eyes, Tom's willingness to contribute was a mere reflection of his residence in my house, rather than a genuine commitment to shared responsibilities. The concept of a working couple collaborating on household duties simply did not register in her worldview. Delving deeper into the situation, I discovered the underlying financial strain plaguing Jen and Steve following Steve's retirement. With his pension falling short, expectations and job opportunities scarce, they found themselves grappling with the daunting prospect of maintaining their rented apartment. It was this sense of desperation that drove them to resort to such unthinkable measures. "No, this house isn't mine, and Tom thinks it's normal to do housework," I asserted, attempting to counter Jen's accusations. Yet, before I could elaborate further, Jen dismissed my words as lies, adamantly refusing to entertain any alternative interpretation. Desperate for clarity amidst the chaos, I redirected the conversation towards practical details. "Where did you sell it?" I inquired, hoping to gain insight into the situation. Jen confirmed my suspicions, revealing that she had engaged an online evaluation real estate agent, AA Real Estate, to facilitate the sale. With minimal effort, the necessary documents were submitted, and the transaction proceeded seamlessly. "It's a convenient world, isn't it?" she remarked with a hint of satisfaction. As the details emerged, it became apparent that Jen had acted impulsively, swayed by the assurances of the real estate agent. The allure of a lucrative offer, coupled with the buyer's eagerness for a property in our area, had seemingly convinced her of the transaction's merits, selling a 20-year-old house for $300,000. "I found a good real estate, didn't I?" she boasted proudly, oblivious to the turmoil her actions had caused. As I delved into my investigation, I came across a website for the real estate company that appeared legitimate. Attempting to confirm the validity of the sale, I dialed their number, only to be met with silence on the other end. Seeking clarification from Jen regarding her involvement, I demanded to know if she had physically visited the real estate company's address. Her response was dismissive, claiming that such visits were unnecessary in today's digital age. Determined to uncover the truth, I issued a firm ultimatum: visit the address in person the following day, or our discussion would cease. To my astonishment, Jen's tearful call the next day confirmed my worst fears. The purported real estate company was nowhere to be found. In its place stood a derelict wooden structure devoid of life. Despite the gravity of the situation, I couldn't help but burst into laughter at Jen's folly. Upon her return, Jen confessed to her misguided actions. Fueled by a misplaced sense of opportunity upon discovering the house registration certificate in my name during my absence, she had enlisted the services of the real estate agent. Their shameless assurances, coupled with Jen's naivety, led her to believe that the sale was legitimate, even without actual ownership. In her eagerness to seize what she perceived as an opportunity, she had unwittingly fallen prey to deception, providing the agent with all the requested documents without hesitation. Upon discovering a potential buyer, the fraudulent real estate agents demanded a deposit, half of their commission fee, amounting to $4,800, equivalent to half of the $9,600 commission promised for the $300,000 sale. Concerned of the gravity of the situation, I promptly contacted the authorities to report the scam. 2 officers were dispatched to our home to investigate the matter further. To our dismay, the police officers revealed that such internet fraud, masquerading as legitimate real estate agents, had become increasingly prevalent. Their modus operandi involved offering free property valuations, soliciting official documents from unsuspecting victims, introducing a fictitious buyer, and then absconding with a hefty fee. It was a cunning scheme that preyed on the vulnerabilities of individuals seeking to sell their properties. With the proliferation of vacant houses and the ease of fabricating addresses for document delivery, such fraudulent activities had surged in recent times. The officers theorized that the fraudsters likely designated a postbox under a fictitious name to receive the documents. Trembling with apprehension, Jen cooperated with the police, providing them with vital information. However, their inquiry took a startling turn when the officer questioned Jen about the house deed. In a barely audible voice, she admitted, "No, it was the original." The revelation left the officer visibly astounded, underscoring the severity of the situation and the extent of Jen's unwitting participation in the scam. As the police officer turned to me for clarification, I calmly denied any involvement in requesting the deposit. "No, I didn't ask for that," I stated plainly. Despite Jen's visibly distressed state, the officer seemed to lean towards trusting my account over hers. "She says she didn't ask for it. Selling things on your own isn't advisable, madame." "This situation is outrageous," he admonished, casting a disapproving glance at Jen, who remained silent, her lip bitten in remorse. Turning his attention back to Jen, the officer probed further about the deed registration. "You sent a copy, right?" Her barely audible response, "No, it was the original," left the officer even more incredulous. His dismay evident, he exchanged a glance with me, silently acknowledging the gravity of the situation. Sensing the need for resolution, the officer inquired about filing a theft report. However, I declined, explaining that the document had no validity in the sale process. "Actually, this house has already been sold to someone else," I revealed, elaborating on the legal changes that rendered the deed registration obsolete in such transactions. While I cherished the deed as a memento of my parents' legacy, its practical significance had diminished over time. With this revelation, the reality of the situation began to sink in, leaving Jen with a heavy sense of regret. As the reality of the situation began to dawn on Jen, she realized her misunderstanding regarding the deed and its implications. In her mind, the presence of the deed signified ongoing ownership of the house. Unaware that its significance had diminished in the sale process orchestrated by the fraudsters, faced with embarrassment and frustration, she turned her gaze towards me with a hint of resentment, questioning why I hadn't sold the house myself. Her muttered words stung, insinuating that my career choices had led to our current predicament. Meeting her gaze with a calm resolve, I explained the true reason behind the sale: Tom's ambition to pursue his dream photography business. With insufficient funds to kickstart his venture, we had made the difficult decision to part with our cherished family home, selling it to an acquaintance and subsequently renting it back. As I recounted the series of events, Jen's demeanor shifted, her shoulders slumping in defeat. Her tearful outburst laid bare the deeper frustrations plaguing her own life, revealing the stark contrast between her own marital struggles and our united front. As she lamented her husband's perceived shortcomings, her grievances poured forth unabated, leaving the police officer at a loss for words as he struggled to navigate the emotional turmoil unfolding before him. Despite filing a fraud report, the perpetrators remained elusive, evading capture for over a decade, leaving little hope for the recovery of the lost funds. In the wake of the ordeal, Steve's trust in Jen waned, prompting him to assume full control over their finances. Stripped of any financial autonomy, Jen found herself relegated to seeking Steve's approval for even the most basic expenses, a restriction she found suffocating and frustrating. As she grappled with the consequences of her actions, Jen turned to Tom for solace, only to be met with a reminder of her own culpability. Bereft of disposable income, she sought employment through senior job listings, eventually finding fulfillment in teaching the elderly how to navigate modern technology. Despite her own struggles, Jen's empathetic approach endeared her to her students, earning her respect for her ability to relate to their challenges and patiently guide them through the intricacies of smartphone usage. Though her circumstances had shifted dramatically, Jen found solace in her newfound role, finding purpose in helping others navigate the digital age. Steve, driven perhaps by his pride, found senior roles unfulfilling and promptly resigned, leaving him without a source of income. Meanwhile, Jen's schedule has become increasingly hectic, often leaving him to tend to household chores as she attends to her commitments. Surprisingly, Steve has discovered a newfound passion for cooking and is honing his skills in the kitchen. The dynamics in Tom's parents' household have shifted dramatically, yet both individuals seem to have found a sense of satisfaction in their new roles. In my own journey, following a successful overseas business trip, I've ascended the career ladder and now serve as the anchor for the evening news. Tom's photography studio is thriving, and together, we've accumulated enough savings to contemplate repurchasing and renovating the family home. We remain grateful to our acquaintance who allowed us to retain ownership of the house despite the distressing ordeal we endured. Ultimately, the situation proved beneficial for Tom's parents. As our son nears adulthood at 17, I've imparted this tale to him as a lesson on the dangers of internet fraud. However, out of respect for his grandparents, I've chosen to keep the aspect of their attempt to sell our house a secret, preserving their dignity.
The paintings your mother-in-law just destroyed were worth $1.8 million. I know because I painted them, and she just called my exclusive dealer to haul them away as garbage. Marcus Rothwell, the most prestigious art dealer in the city, stood in my destroyed studio holding the torn canvas of my latest commission while my mother-in-law Evelyn swayed on her feet like she'd been punched. But the real shock came when he turned to her and said, "Mrs. Hartley, you've just committed a felony. Destroying commissioned artwork is grand larceny, and my security team has been recording everything for the police." The destruction had started 2 hours earlier. I'd been at the farmer's market, selecting flowers for a still life series, when my neighbor called. "Mia, there's a U-Haul at your house. Some woman is throwing paintings into it." I'd raced home to find Evelyn directing 2 hired movers like a general commanding troops. My studio, the converted garage where I'd painted for 5 years, looked like a tornado had hit. Canvases slashed, frames broken, months of work destroyed. "What are you doing?" I'd screamed, grabbing a painting from a mover's hands. "I'm doing what my spineless son won't," Evelyn announced, hands on her designer-clad hips. "Ending this ridiculous hobby. 5 years of marriage, no grandchildren, and why? Because you're playing artist in the garage like a teenager." "Playing artist? This is my career." "Career?" She laughed, a sound like breaking glass. "Honey, hobbies aren't careers. Real careers have salaries, benefits, respectability. Not paint-stained clothes and canvases nobody wants." She grabbed my latest piece, a commission I'd spent 3 months on, and snapped it over her knee. "That was a commissioned piece." I gasped. "Someone paid for that." "Then they're as delusional as you are." She turned to the movers. "Everything goes. I'll pay double if you're done in an hour." That's when I'd called Marcus. Not the police, not my husband. Marcus Rothwell, the dealer who'd been representing me quietly for 2 years, building my reputation slowly, carefully, the way real art careers are built. Don't touch anything else, he'd said. I'm 10 minutes away with security and documentation. Let her keep going. Let her hang herself. So I'd stood there, arms wrapped around myself, watching my mother-in-law destroy 5 years of work while sneering about proper wives and real jobs, and the grandchildren I'll never have because you've poisoned my son with this bohemian nonsense. The movers, sensing tension, had started moving slower, unsure. That's when Evelyn made her fatal error. I'm calling a dealer, she announced, pulling out her phone. Someone who hauls away junk art. Maybe they'll give us a few dollars for the frames. She Googled art dealer near me and called the first number. The universe, in its infinite sense of irony, gave her Rothwell Gallery. Yes, I need someone to clear out worthless paintings. The address? 427 Sycamore Lane. How soon can you? Oh, 30 minutes. Perfect. She hung up triumphantly while I bit my lip to keep from laughing through my tears. Of all the dealers in the city, she called mine. Marcus arrived in a black Mercedes, not a hauling truck. 2 serious-looking men in suits flanked him, not movers, but his security team. Evelyn's smug expression faltered. I called for junk removal, she said uncertainly. No, Mrs. Hartley. Evelyn Hartley. This is my son's house, and I'm clearing out this so-called art studio. I see. Marcus stepped past her into the studio, his face a professional mask that I knew hid fury. And the artist? My daughter-in-law, Mia Johnson. She said my name like it tasted bad. Calls herself a painter. Wastes my son's money and her childbearing years on this nonsense. That's when Marcus saw the destroyed commission. His mask slipped. He knelt beside the broken canvas, examining it with the reverence of someone handling a wounded bird. This was Solitude in Blue. The Petersons' Anniversary Commission. Commission? Evelyn scoffed. Who would pay for? $40,000, Marcus said quietly. They paid $40,000 for this piece. 40% upfront, the rest on delivery. Which is now impossible, as you've destroyed it. The movers had stopped entirely, backing toward their truck. One actually pulled out his phone, sensing this was about to become the kind of scene that goes viral. 40,000? Evelyn's voice cracked. That's impossible. She sells paintings at craft fairs. She hasn't sold at craft fairs in 3 years. Marcus stood, his full height imposing. I've been representing Ms. Johnson exclusively. Her pieces are in private collections across the country. Her last exhibition sold out in 6 hours. He pulled out his tablet, showing documentation I recognized. My contracts, sales records, the waiting list of collectors wanting my work. The Blue Series alone. He gestured to a stack of canvases Evelyn had torn. Was pre-sold to tech executive Sarah Chen for $200,000. The portrait commission from Senator Williams? $75,000. The abstract collection going to the Morrison Museum? $300,000. With each number, Evelyn grew paler. The movers had definitely started recording now. But she never said. My son never mentioned. Because I asked them not to, I said quietly. I wanted to build my career without your influence. Without you trying to use my success to impress your country club friends or take credit for supporting me. Which you never did. Marcus continued his inventory, using an app to photograph damage. Destroyed. Morning Light Series, valued at $150,000. Urban Dreams Collection, $180,000. Various studies and sketches, approximately $50,000. He looked up. Current total of destroyed work, $895,000. She's lying. Evelyn grabbed his tablet. This is fake. Some scam you're running. Marcus gently retrieved his device. Mrs. Hartley, I'm Marcus Rothwell, of Rothwell Gallery. You can verify my credentials. I've been in the art business for 30 years. I don't deal in craft fair art, as you so dismissively put it. I represent serious artists. Your daughter-in-law is one of my most promising. That's when he delivered the killing blow. In fact, I came here today to discuss her solo exhibition at the gallery. We have buyers lined up, including the Whitman Foundation. They were prepared to acquire her entire new collection for their contemporary wing. The collection you've just destroyed. He turned to his security team. Did you get everything? Yes, sir. Full video from arrival, plus Mrs. Johnson's documentation of the damage before we arrived. Excellent. Please call the police. We'll be pressing charges for destruction of property, grand larceny, and interference with business contracts. You can't be serious, Evelyn sputtered. I'm her mother-in-law. This is a family matter. No, this is a criminal matter. You've destroyed nearly $1 million in artwork. Commissioned pieces that were legally sold. That's felony-level theft. The police arrived within minutes. Art crimes involving this much money get priority response. Officer Davidson surveyed the scene with growing amazement. Ma'am, he addressed Evelyn, did you destroy these paintings? I was helping. Cleaning. She's my daughter-in-law, and this is my son's house. Is your name on the deed? He asked. No, but... Did you have permission from the homeowners to enter and remove property? My son would want. That's a no. Did you have permission from the artist to destroy her work? Evelyn looked at me desperately. Mia, tell them this is a misunderstanding. I thought about 5 years of her dismissive comments. 5 years of when will you get a real job? 5 years of you're wasting your life and my son's money. 5 years of her telling everyone I was a failed artist living off her successful son. Officer, I did not give permission. She broke in while I was out and destroyed my professional inventory. Mr. Rothwell can verify the value of the pieces. Marcus handed over his documentation. Officer Davidson whistled low. Nearly $900,000. Ma'am, you're under arrest for felony destruction of property. What? You can't arrest me. I'm Evelyn Hartley. My husband is. Going to need a very good lawyer, Officer Davidson finished, pulling out handcuffs. That's when my husband Jason arrived, screeching to a halt in his Tesla. He took in the scene. His mother in handcuffs. The destroyed studio. Marcus with his security team. Me standing among the wreckage of my work. What the hell is going on? Evelyn immediately started wailing. Jason, your wife is having me arrested. Over some paintings. Tell them. Jason looked at the destruction. At Marcus, whom he recognized. At the documentation the officer was reviewing. Mom, what did you do? I was helping. This obsession of hers has gone too far. She needs to focus on giving us grandchildren. Not. Mom. Jason's voice was deadly quiet. Are you telling me you've destroyed Mia's paintings? The ones going to the Whitman Foundation? You knew. Evelyn and I said simultaneously. He ran his hands through his hair. Of course I knew. I'm her husband. I know about the exhibitions, the sales, the Swiss collector who wants to commission a series. I know my wife is a successful artist making 3 times my salary. 3 times, Evelyn whispered. Last year she made $1.2 million, Jason said flatly. I made $400,000. So yes, Mom, 3 times. And you just destroyed her inventory for her biggest exhibition yet. Evelyn fainted. Actually fainted, dropping like a marionette with cut strings. The EMTs who'd arrived with the police rushed to her. While they tended to her, Marcus pulled me aside. Mia? I need to ask, do you have photos of the destroyed works? High resolution? Everything. I document obsessively. Good. We can work with that. Some collectors prefer to own destroyed works. There's a market for tragedy in art. And your story? Artist mother-in-law destroys $1 million collection out of jealousy. That's the kind of narrative that sells. You're thinking about sales? Now? I'm thinking about your career. This is horrible, yes. But handled correctly, it could launch you into a different stratosphere. The publicity alone. He smiled grimly. Trust me. I've been doing this long enough to know how to spin tragedy into triumph. Evelyn was conscious again, sitting on my front steps with an oxygen mask while officers completed paperwork. Jason stood between us like a referee at a boxing match gone wrong. Mom, he said wearily, do you understand what you've done? You've committed a felony. You've destroyed Mia's work. You've humiliated yourself and our family. And for what? Because you don't approve of her career. She trapped you. Evelyn pulled off the oxygen mask. Made you think she was some struggling artist so you'd support her. She never asked me for money, Jason said. Not once. She paid for this studio renovation. She bought her supplies. Hell, she paid off my student loans last year. The only one trapped here is you. In some 1950s fantasy where women need to choose between careers and children. She can have both, I added quietly. In fact, I was planning to tell you both at dinner next week. I'm pregnant. 3 months, due in January. The silence was deafening. Jason spun toward me, joy replacing anger. Evelyn started crying again, but different tears. The tears of a woman realizing she destroyed her relationship with her daughter-in-law right before her first grandchild arrived. Mia, she reached out. I didn't know. No, I stepped back. You didn't know about the baby. But you knew I was a person with dreams and ambitions and work I loved. That should have been enough to treat me with respect. The police finished processing the scene. Evelyn was formally arrested, though Jason would bail her out within hours. The movers, who'd captured everything on phone cameras, would later sell their footage to news outlets, making the story go viral. Mother-in-law destroys $1 million art collection. Marcus was right about the publicity. Within days, my name was everywhere. Art collectors who'd never heard of me were suddenly interested. The destroyed pieces became legendary. The art that was too powerful for a jealous mother-in-law to tolerate. The Petersons, whose anniversary commission had been destroyed, not only forgave the delay but commissioned 2 more pieces. Anyone whose art can drive someone to such extremes must be creating something powerful, Mrs. Peterson told me. The insurance payout covered the material losses. The lawsuit against Evelyn would likely result in restitution for the full value. But more importantly, the art world rallied around me. Established artists shared their own stories of family members who dismissed their work. Collectors competed to own pieces from the artist who rose from destruction. 6 months later, my solo exhibition opened at Rothwell Gallery. Not the one we'd originally planned, that had been destroyed by Evelyn. This was bigger, bolder, including a series called Aftermath that incorporated pieces of the destroyed canvases into new works. The centerpiece was a massive installation using the torn canvas of Solitude in Blue, reformed into something new, something that spoke of destruction and rebirth, of voices that try to silence art, and the art that refuses to be silenced. Evelyn attended, on probation and forbidden from contacting me without permission. She stood before that piece for an hour, tears sliding down her face. Not for what she destroyed, I think, but for finally understanding what she tried to destroy. Not just paintings, but a voice, a vision, a woman's right to create. Jason stood beside me as red dots appeared next to piece after piece, the gallery's way of marking sales. I'm proud of you, he whispered, hand on my growing belly. For the art. For everything. For keeping your success quiet when Mom would have tried to take credit. For pressing charges when everyone said to let it go. For turning this disaster into triumph. Marcus approached with champagne and sparkling cider. The Whitman Foundation wants everything. The entire collection. They're calling it the most important acquisition of contemporary women's art in a decade. I thought about Evelyn calling my work garbage. About her sneering at my paint-stained clothes. About her ripping canvases while ranting about grandchildren and proper wives. Now those grandchildren would grow up knowing their mother was an artist whose work hung in museums. Would know that sometimes the people who try to destroy your dreams only make them stronger. Oh, Marcus added with a smile. And there's a documentary filmmaker here. She wants to follow your next series from conception to exhibition. Working title: The Art That Wouldn't Die. I laughed, feeling the baby kick. Art that wouldn't die. Fitting, considering someone had literally tried to kill it. Evelyn left early, but not before approaching Jason. Tell Mia. Tell her the piece with the torn canvas. It's beautiful. Heartbreaking and beautiful. He didn't tell me until later. By then, I was too happy to be angry, surrounded by people who understood that art isn't a hobby you outgrow or a phase you abandon for real life. Art is real life, as essential as breathing, as powerful as any traditional career. The Movers video went viral with a title I couldn't have scripted better. Mother-in-law destroys Dial's art. Finds out it's worth $1.8 million. But they got the number wrong. Art isn't worth what someone will pay for it. It's worth what someone will destroy for it. And apparently mine was worth a felony charge, a viral scandal, and a mother-in-law's complete humiliation. I'd say that's priceless.
The smoke alarm was screaming when I pulled into my parents' driveway at 11 p.m. I come to pick up my portfolio, 43 paintings I'd stored in their garage while my studio was being fumigated. My first solo gallery opening was tomorrow. Every piece was already in the catalog. Every piece had been advertised. 3 were already sold to collectors who'd seen previews. I found them in the backyard, standing around the fire pit, wine glasses in hand. My mother was feeding something into the flames, something canvas-shaped, something that looked like, "What are you doing?" My voice came out as a whisper, then a scream. "What are you doing?" Mom turned, her face illuminated by the orange glow, and smiled. Actually smiled. "Oh, Sophia, we're helping you finally grow up." That's when I saw clearly what was burning. My paintings, years of work, thousands of hours, my entire portfolio turning to ash in their decorative fire pit. "Real jobs don't need this garbage," Mom laughed, tossing another small canvas into the flames, my portrait series, the one that had taken 6 months to complete. "We're doing you a favor." Dad lifted his beer in a mock toast. "Time to grow up, failure. You're 28. This starving artist phase was cute at 22. Now it's just embarrassing." I dropped to my knees, reaching toward the fire, trying to save something, anything. The heat drove me back, but not before I saw the remnants of Tempest, the piece that had won the Emerging Artist Award. The one already sold for $12,000. "You burned them?" I said, my voice hollow. "You burned everything." "Not everything," my younger brother Connor said from the shadows, holding up one small painting, a landscape I'd done in high school. "We kept this one to show you had potential once, before you wasted it on this nonsense. The gallery opening is tomorrow. People are coming from New York, from Los Angeles. There are collectors." "We called and canceled," Mom said brightly. "Told them you'd had a mental breakdown, that you destroyed your own work in a manic episode. They were very understanding." The world tilted. "You, what?" "Dr. Morrison, you remember, our friend from the club. He wrote a letter supporting our story. Said he'd been treating you for bipolar disorder." Dad pulled out his phone, showing me an email. "See? All official. The gallery already responded. They're concerned for your well-being and have canceled the showing." I stared at the formal cancellation from Gallery Montrose sent 2 hours ago. They were deeply concerned about my mental health crisis and wished me a speedy recovery. "You're insane," I whispered. "No, sweetheart," Mom patted my head like I was 5. "According to the paper trail, you are." "Why?" I stood shaking. "Why would you do this?" "Because Harrison Brennan's daughter doesn't work retail while pretending to be an artist," Dad said. "I'm CFO of a Fortune 500 company. Your mother is on 3 charity boards. Connor's at Harvard Law. And you? You're embarrassing us. I'm not working retail. I teach art at the community center to pay rent while I build my career." "Exactly. Teaching finger painting to housewives. Living in that raffle apartment. Driving that ancient Honda." Mom shuddered. "The Weatherbys asked about you at the gala last month. I had to lie and say you were studying abroad. I didn't ask you to lie. Your existence is a lie, Connor chimed in, ever the golden child. You're nearly 30 with nothing to show for it but some paintings no one wants. 3 were already sold. To whom? Other broke artists, friends feeling sorry for you. I pulled out my phone, hands shaking, pulling up the emails. To the Hartman Collection, to Angela Voss. To. Dad grabbed my phone, glancing at it, then laughing. These are the invoices you sent, not confirmation of payment. They probably never intended to pay. Just humoring you. He was wrong. The payments have already been processed. The checks were in my apartment, but they didn't know that. They also didn't know something else. Where are the other paintings? I asked, counting the ashes, the remnants. There were 43 pieces. I see maybe 15 here. Of the big ones wouldn't fit in the pit, Mom said. We took those to the dump this afternoon. Had to rent a truck. Cost us $80, by the way. You owe us. The dump. She'd taken the centerpiece of my exhibition, a 7 by 10-foot oil painting that had taken a year to complete, to the dump. Get out, I said quietly. This is our house. Dad laughed. You get out and take this garbage artist fantasy with you. I left, drove home in a haze. Called the gallery, but they wouldn't answer. Called the collectors, but they'd already been told about my breakdown. Called my mentor, the established artist who'd gotten me the show, but she was in Paris and it was 5 a.m. there. I sat in my apartment, staring at the blank walls where my paintings should have been hanging for the pre-show tour tomorrow. Then I saw the package by my door. From Marcus, my ex-boyfriend who'd moved to Seattle 6 months ago. We'd broken up because my parents had convinced him I'd never amount to anything, that he was wasting his time. But we'd stayed friends. Inside was a hard drive and a note. Thought you might want these for your exhibition catalog. So proud of you. The hard drive contained something I'd forgotten about. Marcus was a photographer. He documented everything. Every painting, every sketch, every work in progress. 3,000 high-resolution images of my art, including detailed shots of all 43 pieces in the destroyed portfolio. But more importantly, there were videos. Him interviewing me about each piece, time-stamped, dated, showing the paintings in various stages of completion over the past 5 years. And at the bottom of the box, a USB with security footage from his old apartment's garage where I'd stored the paintings before moving them to my parents' place. Time-stamped footage showing every painting being moved, intact, just 3 days ago. I called my lawyer. Yes, I had one. Because this wasn't the first time my parents had tried to sabotage me, just the most extreme. They destroyed your work. Patricia's voice was sharp. The pieces that were already sold. Yes. That's destruction of property. Fraud. Defamation with the mental health claims. We can file criminal charges. There's more, I said. They took the biggest pieces to the dump this afternoon. They might still be there. I'll meet you there in an hour. Bring any documentation you have. The dump was closed, but Patricia knew someone. We got in with a security guard and flashlights at 2 a.m. And there, in the section for large items, were my paintings. 28 of them, including Metamorphosis, the 7 by 10 centerpiece. They were damaged, scratched, some torn, but they existed. Why aren't these burned? Patricia asked. The security guard checked the logs. Says here someone called about burning large items this afternoon. We don't allow fires that big. Told them to dump them instead. They tried to burn them all. The dump had saved my career by having fire regulations. We loaded everything into a rented truck. Some pieces were salvageable. Others would need restoration. But they existed. My year-long painting, despite a tear across the bottom corner, was mostly intact. At 6 a.m., I called Gallery Montrose. Told them everything. Sent them the videos from Marcus, the security footage, the photos of my parents by the fire pit that I'd taken without them noticing, the dump receipt with their names on it. The gallery owner, David Montrose, was silent for a long moment. Then, your parents did this? Your own parents? Yes. The opening is in 12 hours. I know. How many pieces can you restore by then? Maybe 10, 15 if I work nonstop. Do it. We'll adjust the exhibition. Call it Phoenix, Art Rising from Destruction. We'll display the damaged pieces alongside Marcus's photographs of the originals. Show the world what you've survived. But the mental health claims. I'll handle that. Dr. Morrison is about to learn what happens when you fabricate medical records. That's a felony, by the way. I spent the next 10 hours in a frenzy. 3 artist friends came to help. We stabilized tears, cleaned smoke damage, mounted what we could. Marcus flew in from Seattle with printed enlargements of his photographs. By 5 p.m. we had something. Not what I'd planned, but something more powerful. The gallery walls showed both versions, the photographs of complete works beside the damaged originals. The burned canvas fragments were displayed in glass cases like archaeological finds. The centerpiece, Metamorphosis, hung with its tear unrepaired, a black scar across the bottom that somehow made it more powerful. The opening was at 7 p.m. At 6:30, my parents arrived. They walked in like they owned the place, Mom in her charity gala dress, Dad in his power suit, Connor trailing behind. "We're here to apologize for our daughter's behavior," Mom announced to David Montrose, "and to discuss compensating you for any damages her mental episode may have." She stopped, saw the walls, saw the paintings, saw the photographs, saw the centerpiece display, a monitor playing security footage of them throwing my paintings into their truck, labeled The Destruction. 3:47 p.m., November 14th. "What is this?" Dad's face went white. "This is my exhibition," I said, stepping out from behind a display panel. "Phoenix, Art from Ashes, the story of how my own family tried to destroy my career because it didn't fit their image." "You can't show this," Mom shrieked. "This is defamation." "Truth isn't defamation," Patricia said, appearing with 2 police officers. "But filing false medical records is a crime, as is destruction of property valued over $50,000. $50,000. Connor scoffed. "Her finger paintings aren't worth." David Montrose interrupted. "Actually, the 3 pieces that were pre-sold were valued at $35,000 total. The entire collection was insured for $120,000. Would you like to see the paperwork?" My parents stood frozen as the officers approached. "Harrison and Margaret Brennan, you're under arrest for felony destruction of property, fraud, and conspiracy." "This is ridiculous," Dad roared. "I'm CFO off a company that's about to see their executive arrested at an art gallery," David said, already typing on his phone. "The art world is small, Mr. Brennan, but our reach is long. By tomorrow, everyone will know what you did." As they were let out in handcuffs, Mom turned to me. "You've ruined us." "No," I said. "You ruined yourselves the moment you lit that match." The opening was a sensation, not just because of the art, but because of the story. Every piece sold. Not for sympathy, but because the story of their destruction and survival had transformed them into something more. The torn Metamorphosis sold for $40,000, more than 3 times its original price. The New York Times ran a feature, Phoenix Rising, how one artist turned family betrayal into triumph. The criminal trial was quick. My parents pled guilty to lesser charges to avoid jail time. They got probation, community service, and were ordered to pay restitution, $120,000, the full insured value of the destroyed works. But the real price was higher. Dad was asked to resign as CFO, something about conduct unbecoming. Mom was removed from her charity boards. Connor, the golden child, found his Harvard law reputation tainted by association. Law firms Googled his name and found articles about his parents burning his sister's art. They tried to reconcile once, 6 months later, sent a letter through their lawyer saying they'd been stressed and misunderstood the value of my work. I sent back a photo of my new studio, bought with the money from the Phoenix exhibition. On the wall behind me hung Metamorphosis with its scar still unrepaired, now my signature piece, worth more than their house. I included a note, "Real jobs don't need paintings, but real artists don't need your approval." Last week, I opened my 5th solo exhibition. The theme was family portraits, abstract pieces inspired by trauma and healing. The centerpiece was a new 7 by 10 painting, a fire pit with canvases burning, but from the ashes, birds rising. Phoenixes. My parents weren't invited, but I heard from Connor that they saw the reviews. The Times called it a searing indictment of parental betrayal that transcends personal pain to become universal. Connor also mentioned they'd had to sell their house. The legal fees, the restitution, the lost income, it all added up. They're living in a 2-bedroom apartment now, the kind they used to mock me for having. They blame you, he said over coffee, one of his rare attempts at contact. They burned my life's work the night before my opening. They were trying to help. They were trying to control. There's a difference. He left, but not before buying one of my pieces, a small painting of a house on fire titled Home. Why this one? I asked as I wrapped it. Because it reminds me that sometimes things need to burn down before you can see what's really there. Maybe Connor learned something after all. My art now hangs in galleries across the country. The story of the Phoenix exhibition follows each piece. How destruction became creation. How betrayal became triumph. Critics say my work has a rawness, an honesty that comes from survival. They're right, every painting carries the smoke of that fire pit. Every canvas remembers the flames. But more than that, they remember the rising. My parents thought they were burning garbage. Instead, they lit a fire that launched my career higher than their approval ever could have. They were right about one thing. Real jobs don't need paintings. But real life? Real life needs art that survives the fire. Art that refuses to stay ash. Art that rises. And I rose. The funeral director was still adjusting Marcus's tie when my sister pulled me aside. I could barely see through my tears, barely stand on legs that felt like water, barely comprehend that my husband of 8 years was lying in that mahogany casket, gone at 32 from an aneurysm that stole him in his sleep. Isabel, my sister Chloe whispered, her manicured nails digging into my black dress sleeve. We need to talk about the life insurance. I blinked, certain I misheard. Marcus had been dead for 4 days. 4 days of me screaming into his pillow, wearing his cologne, playing his voicemail just to hear him say, "Hey babe, running late, love you." And she wanted to talk about money. What? My voice came out raw, shredded from crying. The life insurance, she repeated, slower, like I was stupid. I'm getting married in 6 months, Ryan, and I need it more than you do. The room tilted. Behind her, Mom nodded approvingly, her pearls catching the funeral home's soft lighting. She's right, Isabel. You don't have kids. Chloe deserves a perfect wedding. You had your chance. Had my chance. Like marriage was a lottery ticket and mine had been cashed out by death. Are you seriously asking for my husband's life insurance at his funeral? I whispered. Chloe rolled her eyes. Don't be so dramatic. It's not like you need $1 million to sit around and cry. I need it for the venue, the dress, the honeymoon. This is my once-in-a-lifetime moment. Marcus's mother, Grace, was walking toward us, her face swollen from grief. I watched her adjust the photo board, pictures of Marcus coaching Little League, building houses with Habitat for Humanity, our wedding photo where he crying as I walked down the aisle. Besides, Mom added, straightening my hair like I was 5, you're young. You'll remarry. Chloe's wedding is in 6 months. We need to start planning now. He's not even in the ground yet, I said numbly. Which is why we need to handle this efficiently, Mom said. Sign the papers over to Chloe after the service. We'll consider it our wedding gift from Marcus. Our gift, from my dead husband, to my sister who called him boring and too safe throughout our entire marriage. I looked at Chloe, really looked at her. Perfect blonde highlights, fresh spray tan for the funeral, the black dress she'd bought last week that she called versatile enough for the wedding circuit after this depressing stuff is over. She was 26, worked part-time at our dad's company when she felt like it, and had already burned through 2 trust fund payouts. No, I said quietly. Excuse me? Mom's voice sharpened. I said no. Chloe's face flushed. You selfish bitch. You always were jealous of me. Just because your husband died doesn't mean you get to ruin my happiness. People were starting to stare. Marcus's coworkers, our friends, his family. All watching the grieving widow get berated by her family at her husband's funeral. Lower your voice, I hissed. I will not. Chloe stamped her designer heel. Ryan's family is expecting a certain caliber of wedding. Do you know how embarrassing it is that I can't book the country club because my cheap sister won't share? Marcus would want me to be happy. Marcus, who'd driven 3 hours each way to get Chloe from jail when she got in her second DUI. Who'd lent her money she'd never repaid. Who'd bitten his tongue when she'd shown up to our wedding reception 2 hours late and drunk. Grace reached us then, taking in Chloe's red face and my shell-shocked expression. Is everything all right? Just family business, Mom said smoothly. At my son's funeral, Grace's voice was steel. Isabel's being selfish about the life insurance. Chloe whined. I need it for my wedding. Grace's face went very still. You're asking for Marcus's life insurance. At his funeral. For a wedding. Everyone's acting like I'm a monster. Chloe threw her hands up. It's just money. She doesn't need it. Get out, Grace said quietly. Excuse me? Get out, Grace stepped between us. You want to rob my daughter-in-law while she buries my son. Get out of my funeral home. Mom puffed up. How dare you? I pay for this funeral, Grace cut her off. Every penny, because I knew vultures would circle. I just didn't think they'd be her own family. Security was already moving. Mom and Chloe were escorted out. Chloe shrieking about lawsuits and her wedding. Mom threatening to disown me. The entire funeral watched them go. I made it through the service somehow. Through the burial, where I placed my wedding ring on Marcus's casket because I couldn't bear the thought of him alone without it. Through the reception, where person after person told me how lucky I'd been to have him. Lucky, like love was a scratch-off ticket and mine had paid out in grief. That night, alone in our house, my house now, I sat on the bathroom floor where Marcus had died. The paramedics said it had been instant, no pain. Just gone between heartbeats. I found him that morning, thought he was sleeping late, kissed his cold cheek before I'd realized. My phone had 47 messages, all from Chloe or Mom, escalating from guilt trips to threats to promises that I'd die alone and unloved if I didn't do the right thing. The right thing. I pulled out my laptop and opened Marcus's life insurance policy. $1 million. He'd insisted on it last year, said he wanted me protected just in case. I'd laughed, told him we had decades ahead of us. He'd known. Somehow he'd known. But he'd known something else too. In his files, I found it all. Screenshots of Chloe's messages to him. Years of them. Asking for money, calling me a boring prude, trying to convince him he'd married the wrong sister. The last one was from a week before he died. When are you going to realize Isabel trapped you? You could have had me. My husband had saved every single one. There was more. Receipts showing he'd lent Chloe over $30,000 over our marriage. Recordings, legal in our state, of phone calls where she threatened to tell Isabel lies if he didn't pay for her latest emergency. Evidence that she'd stolen my credit card information twice. And then, the kicker, emails between Mom and Chloe from 3 months ago, planning how to get money from us for the wedding. Mom's suggestion. Wait for a vulnerable moment, death or illness. People make rash decisions when they're emotional. They planned this. Maybe not Marcus's death, but the vulture circling after. I didn't sleep that night, or the next. By the third night, I had a plan. See, Chloe's wedding wasn't just any wedding. She was marrying Ryan Blackwood, heir to a tech fortune, son of a senator. The wedding was going to be the social event of the year in our city. 400 guests, society pages, the works. And I was going to destroy it. But not the way you'd think, not with screaming or scenes or violence. No, I was going to use something far more devastating, the truth. First, I accepted their olive branch. Showed up to Mom's house with red eyes and shaking hands. You're right, I sobbed. Marcus would want Chloe to be happy. I'll sign over half the insurance. They believed me instantly. No surprise. They'd always thought I was weak. I knew you'd see reason, Mom cooed, already calculating. Half will cover the venue and catering at least. I want to help plan, I said softly. It'll give me something to focus on. Please. Chloe actually hugged me. I knew you loved me deep down. And maybe being around wedding stuff will help you move on. Who knows? Maybe you'll catch my bouquet. The thought of catching anything at her wedding made me physically ill. But I smiled and nodded and became the perfect sister. For 6 months, I helped plan every detail, attended every fitting, every tasting, every meeting with florists and photographers. I was supportive, enthusiastic even. Meanwhile, I was documenting everything. Like how Chloe was still texting 3 ex-boyfriends, including explicit photos, while Ryan was deployed overseas with the National Guard. How Mom was skimming from the wedding budget to fund her gambling habit. How they both laughed about scamming the grieving widow, in texts they didn't know I could see. Marcus had set up our family cloud storage, and they'd never changed the passwords he'd given them. I hired a private investigator with Marcus's life insurance money. Not to follow Chloe, I had enough evidence of her infidelity, but to dig deeper into Ryan's family. Turns out, the Blackwoods had their own secrets: tax evasion, embezzlement, a Senate campaign built on fraud. But they didn't know someone was looking. Not yet. The wedding day arrived like a fever dream. June 15th, what would have been Marcus's 33rd birthday. Chloe hadn't remembered, of course. When I'd mentioned it months ago, she'd waved it off. He's dead, Isabel. Let it go. The country club was perfect. 10,000 roses, crystal chandeliers, a string quartet playing softly. 400 of the city's most elite citizens in attendance. The senator gave interviews about his beautiful new daughter. Mom preened in her mother of the bride dress that cost more than most people's cars. Chloe was radiant in her $20,000 gown, paid for with my husband's death. I was her maid of honor, she'd insisted. It'll show everyone we're united as a family, she'd said. Really, she'd wanted me to see up close what real happiness looked like. The ceremony began. Ryan stood at the altar, handsome in his tuxedo, unaware that his bride had spent the previous night with her ex. The music swelled. Chloe began her walk down the aisle. That's when the first phone chimed. Then another, and another. A symphony of notifications rippling through the crowd. What the hell? Someone whispered. Every guest had received an email from an anonymous account. Subject line: the truth about the Blackwood Palmer wedding. Attached: everything. Chloe's affair texts, Mom's embezzlement records, the Blackwood family's fraud documents, and the crown jewel, the recording of Chloe at Marcus's funeral demanding his life insurance for her wedding. The audio echoed through 400 phones. You don't need it. I'm getting married. He's dead anyway. The senator's face went purple. Ryan stared at his phone, then at Chloe, his expression morphing from confusion to horror. Guests were gasping, recording, already posting to social media. Stop. Chloe screamed, dropping her bouquet. Turn them off. But it was too late. The emails kept coming. Screenshots of her calling Ryan, boring in bed. Evidence of Mom's theft from the wedding fund. Photos of Chloe with her ex, timestamp last night. You, she spun to face me. You did this. I stood calmly at the altar, hands folded over my bridesmaid bouquet. Did what? You destroyed my wedding. No, I said, loud enough for everyone to hear. You destroyed my life. You demanded my husband's life insurance at his funeral. You turned his death into your shopping spree. You stood over his grave and planned your honeymoon. You said you forgave me. She was sobbing now, mascara running in black rivers. I lied. I shrugged. Just like you lied to Ryan, to everyone. The senator was already leaving, his security detail forming a protective wall. Ryan had backed away from the altar like Chloe was contagious. Guests were fleeing, desperate to distance themselves from the scandal. My wedding. Chloe wailed. My perfect wedding. Pay for with blood money, I said. Every flower, every crystal, every bite of food. Bought with my husband's death. I hope it tastes like ashes. Mom rushed the altar. Fix this. You fix this right now. Can't. I pulled out my phone, showed them the timer. The FBI will be here in about 10 minutes. Turns out they're very interested in the Blackwood family finances. And Mom, that gambling problem of yours, the casino debts you paid with stolen wedding funds, also interesting to certain people. You're our family, Mom shrieked. Marcus was my family. My voice broke for the first time, and you celebrated his death because it funded your party. I walked out as the sirens began, past the ruined cake, the scattered roses, the abandoned gifts. Chloe's sobs echoed behind me. But I didn't turn around. In the parking lot, Grace was waiting by my car. She'd known, of course, had helped me plan every detail. How do you feel? She asked gently. Empty, I admitted, but also free. He'd be proud, she said, pulling me into a hug. Marcus always said you were stronger than they knew. The aftermath was swift and brutal. Ryan called off the engagement that night. The Blackwood family scandal made national news. The senator resigned in disgrace. Mom was arrested for embezzlement. Chloe lost her job, her social standing, everything. They tried to sue me, of course. But truth is an absolute defense. Every document I'd released was real, every recording legally obtained. Their lawyer dropped them after the first meeting. I used Marcus's life insurance to start a foundation in his name. Scholarships for kids who'd lost parents, grief counseling, everything he would have wanted. Everything that honored his memory instead of desecrating it. Chloe sent one last message 6 months later. I hope you're happy. You're alone just like we said you'd be. But she was wrong. I wasn't alone. I had Grace, who'd become the mother I'd never had. I had Marcus's friends who'd rallied around me. I had the kids at the foundation who hugged me and called me Miss Izzy. And late at night, when I missed him so much I couldn't breathe, I had Marcus's voice on that voicemail. Hey babe, running late. Love you. Love. Not money, not parties, not perfect weddings. Just love. They tried to steal that from me to turn it into currency. But love isn't something you can deposit or withdraw. It's something you carry forever, like grief, like strength, like the knowledge that someone once chose you above all others. Chloe had wanted a perfect wedding. Instead, she got a perfect lesson. When you dance on someone's grave, don't be surprised when they rise up to teach you the steps. And me, I got what Marcus had always given me, the last word, the last laugh, and the lasting love that no amount of life insurance could ever replace. The wedding may have been destroyed, but my husband's memory, that was finally, peacefully, at rest. The champagne flute trembled in my hand as I watched my son take the microphone at his wedding reception. From my seat at table 8, strategically placed behind a decorative pillar, I had a partially obstructed view of the head table where Brandon stood in his perfectly tailored tuxedo, his new bride Jessica beaming beside him. Before we continue with dinner, Brandon began, his voice carrying through the elegant ballroom. I want to take a moment to thank the woman who made me who I am today. My heart swelled. After everything we've been through, maybe this was the moment he finally acknowledged. Diana, would you please stand up? I watched his stepmother rise gracefully from table 1, her designer dress catching the light from the chandeliers. She'd been his father's wife for exactly 4 years. 4 years out of Brandon's 26 years of life. This amazing woman, Brandon continued, his voice thick with emotion, taught me what real strength looks like. She showed me how to carry myself in the business world, how to demand excellence, and how to never settle for mediocrity. Diana, you're the mother I always needed. Thank you for raising me to be the man I am today. The words hit me like physical blows, each syllable carefully chosen, each pause perfectly timed. I sat frozen at table 8, while 200 wedding guests erupted in applause. My sister Margaret, seated beside me, grabbed my hand under the table, her grip tight with shared indignation. But Brandon wasn't finished. Oh no, my son had more to say. I know I wouldn't be standing here today, successful and happy, without the guidance of the woman who raised me. He raised his champagne glass toward Diana. To the best mom a guy could ask for. To Diana. The crowd echoed. I smiled. Years of practice had taught me how to curve my lips upward while my heart shattered. I raised my glass with everyone else, took a small sip, and quietly placed my napkin on my plate. Margaret whispered urgently in my ear, but I shook my head. I need some air, I murmured, standing as gracefully as my shaking legs would allow. I made it through the ballroom doors before the tears came. 26 years. 26 years of 3 a.m. feedings, of staying up all night when he had the flu, of driving him to hockey practice at dawn every Saturday. 26 years of helping with homework, attending every game, every concert, every parent-teacher conference. I thought about the nights I'd spent at the kitchen table, going over college applications with him. The way I'd worked double shifts at the hospital to pay for his tutors when he struggled with calculus. The day I'd held him while he sobbed after his first girlfriend broke his heart. Diana had been there for none of it. The valet brought my car, and I drove home in silence, my phone buzzing incessantly in my purse. I knew it would be Margaret, probably my mother, maybe even some of the family friends who'd witnessed my humiliation. I ignored them all. At home, I poured myself a glass of wine, good wine, from the bottle I'd been saving for a special occasion, and sat down at my computer. The trust fund documents were exactly where I'd filed them years ago, properly organized in both digital and physical copies. Brandon's grandfather, my father, had established the trust when Brandon was born, naming me as the sole trustee with complete discretionary power over distributions. The trust currently held $1.2 million. My fingers hovered over the keyboard as I logged into the trust management portal. For 26 years, I carefully managed this money, investing it wisely, watching it grow, planning to give Brandon the perfect start to his married life. The plan had been to transfer control to him as a wedding gift, along with a substantial distribution for a house down payment. But Diana had raised him, hadn't she? Diana had made him the man he was today. I made several phone calls that night, first to the trust attorney, confirming my absolute right as trustee to freeze all distributions indefinitely. Then to my financial advisor, initiating a complete review of the trust's investment strategy, a process that would legally prevent any distributions for at least 6 months. The next morning came faster than expected. I was enjoying my coffee on the back patio, watching the sunrise, when my phone exploded with calls. Richard's number appeared first, then Brandon's, then unknown numbers I assumed were wedding vendors. I let them all go to voicemail. At 9:47 a.m., Richard's car screeched into my driveway. My ex-husband looked disheveled, his hair uncombed, his shirt partially untucked. This was not the polished executive image he usually presented. "What did you do?" he demanded, not even bothering with a greeting as I opened the door. "Good morning to you too, Richard. Rough night? How was the wedding?" "Cut the crap, Monica. The trust fund is frozen. The check I wrote for the catering bounced. The honeymoon package is being canceled. What the hell did you do?" I stepped aside to let him in, mainly because I didn't want the neighbors to witness his meltdown. "Would you like coffee? You look like you could use some." "I don't want coffee. I want to know why you sabotage our son's wedding." "Our son?" I laughed, the sound bitter even to my own ears. "I thought Diana raised him. Isn't that what he announced to everyone last night?" Richard's face went through several shades of red. "You're being petty. He was just thanking Diana for raising him." "Yes, I heard." From table 8. I moved to the kitchen, pouring myself another cup of coffee with steady hands. "Tell me, Richard, where was Diana when Brandon had chicken pox? When he broke his arm falling off his bike? When he needed 3 hours of help with his science fair project?" "That's not the point." "Oh, but it is the point. Brandon made it very clear last night that Diana is the woman who raised him, who made him who he is today. So naturally, I assumed she'd be handling his financial needs as well. The trust fund is his money." "Actually," I said calmly, "it's not. The trust fund is under my complete control as trustee. My father made sure of that. I have absolute discretion over when and how distributions are made, or if they're made at all." Richard sank into one of my kitchen chairs, his anger deflating into panic. "Monica, the wedding vendors are calling. We're going to be sued. Brandon and Jessica are supposed to leave for Bora Bora tomorrow." "Then I suggest you figure it out. After all, Diana raised him to be successful, didn't she? I'm sure between the 3 of you, you can handle a few bills." "A few bills? The outstanding balance is over $70,000. I nearly choked on my coffee. $70,000. For a wedding? Diana planned it, he admitted reluctantly. She said Brandon deserved the best. Of course she did. With my father's money. My phone rang. Brandon's picture appeared on the screen, a photo from his high school graduation, where he was hugging me, both of us laughing. I let it go to voicemail. "Monica, please," Richard's voice had shifted to pleading. "This is Brandon's wedding. Don't ruin it because your feelings were hurt." "My feelings?" I set down my coffee cup harder than necessary. "You think this is about my feelings? For 26 years, I've put Brandon first. Every decision, every sacrifice, every moment of my life revolved around being his mother. And last night, in front of every important person in our lives, he erased all of that. He didn't mean. He looked me in the eye when he walked past table 8 to greet guests. He knew exactly where I was sitting. He knew what he was doing." Richard's phone buzzed. He glanced at it and paled. "The venue is threatening to call the police if we don't settle the bill immediately." "Then you better transfer some money from your accounts, or ask Diana. After all, she's the one who raised him." "You know I can't cover $70,000 overnight." "Then maybe you shouldn't have let Diana plan a wedding you couldn't afford without stealing from my father's trust." Richard stood abruptly, his chair scraping against the floor. "This is cruel, Monica. You're punishing Brandon for a few poorly chosen words." "Poorly chosen?" I laughed again. "No, Richard. Those words were carefully selected. Brandon's always been articulate. I made sure of that with the best schools and tutors money could buy. He knew exactly what he was saying. After Richard left, slamming my door hard enough to rattle the windows, I sat in the quiet of my kitchen. My phone showed 37 missed calls. The voicemail box was full. I thought about Brandon as a little boy, the way he'd curl up next to me on the couch for story time. The teenager who'd still give me quick hugs when his friends weren't looking. The young man who'd called me crying after his first job rejection. When had I lost him? When had Diana's influence, her promises of connections, her flashy lifestyle, her surface-level involvement, become more valuable than 26 years of actual motherhood? The answer came with my doorbell. At 2 p.m. Brandon stood on my porch, still in his wedding clothes from the night before, looking haggard. Jessica was nowhere to be seen. "Mom," he started, and I almost broke. It had been so long since he'd called me that. "Can we talk?" I let him in. What else could I do? Despite everything, he was still my son. He sat in the same chair his father had occupied hours earlier. The trust fund is frozen pending a complete review of the investment strategy. It's my fiduciary duty as trustee to ensure the funds are being managed properly. "Mom, please." Jessica's parents are furious. The vendors are threatening to sue. Our honeymoon. "Your honeymoon?" I interrupted. "Shouldn't you be discussing this with Diana? After all, she's the woman who raised you." Brandon had the grace to flinch. I didn't mean it the way it sounded." "Really? Because it sounded like you were erasing 26 years of my life. It sounded like you were giving credit for your success to a woman who's been in your life for 4 years. Diana's been good to me, and I haven't." "That's not what I meant." He ran his hands through his hair, messing up the carefully styled look. "Diana understands the business world. She has connections." "Connections," I repeated. "Is that what makes a mother?" "Connections. You wouldn't understand." "You're right," I cut him off. "I wouldn't understand. I was too busy working night shifts to pay for your hockey equipment to develop business connections. Too focused on helping you with homework to network at country clubs. Too concerned with raising you to worry about climbing social ladders. That's not fair." "Fair?" I stood unable to sit still any longer. "Was it fair when I missed my promotion opportunity because I couldn't travel while you were dealing with teenage depression? Was it fair when I spent my retirement savings on your undergraduate degree so you wouldn't have loans? Was it fair when I sat at table 8 last night?" Brandon was crying now, silent tears rolling down his cheeks. "I'm sorry. I'm so sorry. I don't know why I said it." Diana had been coaching me on the speech, and she suggested. "Stop." I held up my hand. "Don't blame Diana. You're 26 years old. You made a choice. What do you want me to do? How do I fix this?" I looked at my son, really looked at him. When had he become this person who valued appearances over authenticity, who could so easily dismiss the woman who'd given everything for him? "I don't know if he can," I said honestly. "The trust fund will remain frozen until I decide otherwise. Your grandfather gave me that authority because he trusted my judgment. Right now, my judgment says you're not ready for that responsibility. But the wedding, the vendors, are your father and Diana's problem. After all, she planned it. She can figure out how to pay for it." Brandon left shortly after, his shoulders slumped in defeat. I watched from my window as he sat in his car for 10 minutes before driving away. The calls continued for days. Family members who'd been at the wedding reached out, some supportive, others critical of my harsh response. I ignored most of them. Margaret came by daily, bringing wine and righteous indignation in equal measure. You should have seen Diana's face when the catering manager interrupted the reception. She told me on day 3. Apparently, the check bounced while they were serving dessert. They actually stopped bringing out the wedding cake. I felt a twinge of sympathy for Jessica. None of this was her fault. 2 weeks later, Brandon called again. This time, his voice was different. Subdued. Thoughtful. "Mom, can we have lunch? Just the 2 of us?" I agreed, choosing a quiet restaurant where we used to go when he was in high school. He looked older somehow, the past 2 weeks having aged him visibly. "I've been thinking," he began after we ordered, "about everything you did for me, everything I took for granted." I waited, not making it easy for him. Diana and Dad, they couldn't cover the wedding bills. We had to take out a loan. Jessica's parents paid for the honeymoon so we wouldn't lose it entirely. He laughed bitterly. Diana suddenly had a lot less advice once she had to actually deal with the consequences. I see. I hurt you, he continued, not just at the wedding. For years, I've been hurting you, choosing them over you, acting like what you did didn't matter because it wasn't flashy or impressive to my friends. Why? I asked simply. Brandon was quiet for a long moment. Because it was easier, he finally admitted. It was easier to impress people by talking about Diana's connections than explaining that my real mom worked double shifts as a nurse. It was easier to brag about Dad's business than to talk about how you stayed up all night helping me study. I was ashamed, and that shame made me cruel. The honesty was brutal, but I appreciated it. I don't expect you to forgive me, he said. I don't expect you to unfreeze the trust fund. I needed you to know that I know. I know who really raised me. I know who sacrificed everything for me, and I'm sorry I let you sit at table 8. I reached across the table and took his hand. I love you, Brandon. I've loved you since the moment I first held you. That will never change. But trust, respect, those have to be earned back. I understand. I want to earn them back. It took time, months of regular lunches, of real conversations, of Brandon learning to see me as a person and not just a resource. Diana's influence faded quickly once the money dried up. She and Richard divorced within 18 months, the relationship crumbling without my father's trust fund to prop it up. I eventually unfroze the trust, but with new conditions. Distributions would be made gradually, tied to Brandon demonstrating financial responsibility and maintaining a genuine relationship with me. He agreed without complaint. At Jessica's baby shower 2 years later, Brandon stood to speak. This time, I was at table 1, right beside him. Before we start, he said, his voice steady, I want to thank my mom, my real mom, the woman who actually raised me, who sacrificed everything for me, who loved me even when I didn't deserve it. Mom, you're the reason I know how to be a parent. Thank you for never giving up on me. This time, my tears were happy ones. The trust fund? It's still there, growing and waiting. But now it's not the most valuable thing I'm leaving my son. That would be the lesson he learned. That love isn't measured in connections or flash or public recognition. It's measured in presence, in sacrifice, in showing up every single day, even when you're relegated to table 8. Especially then.
The investigator told her she'd committed a federal crime by destroying military property without authorization. Every item was documented with photos, receipts, and certificates I'd stored in the cloud. Aunt Barbara's screaming stopped cold when Agent Martinez listed what she'd trashed. A 1952 Mickey Mantle rookie card, first edition Superman comics, and my grandfather's way memorabilia. The real question: how did she get into my storage unit after I'd removed her from the access list? My name is Marcus Webb, Master Surgeon, U.S. Army, currently standing in my empty storage unit in Houston while home on emergency leave. 6 months ago, I left for deployment to Kuwait, trusting that my carefully secured collection would be waiting when I returned. Instead, I'm staring at bare walls and a single note in my aunt's handwriting. Finally cleaned out this mess. You can thank me later. Aunt Barb. Let me explain how a lifetime of collecting became junk in the eyes of someone who thought anything that wasn't jewelry or designer handbags had no value. I started collecting when I was 8. The year my grandfather died and left me his World War II memorabilia. Nothing museum-worthy to most people, patches, medals, photos, letters home. But Grandpa had served with the 442nd Infantry Regiment, the most decorated unit in U.S. military history, comprised almost entirely of Japanese Americans who fought for a country that had interned their families. His collection told a story that textbooks overlooked. My mother, Grandpa's daughter, understood the value, not monetary, but historical. She helped me preserve everything properly, taught me about archival storage, encouraged my growing interest in military history. When kids were trading Pokemon cards, I was carefully cataloging military insignia. The collection grew. Comic books from estate sales, first appearances of major characters bought for quarters before anyone cared about grading. Sports cards from the 1950s and 60s found in dusty boxes at flea markets. Military memorabilia from every American conflict. By high school, I had a part-time job just to fund my collecting habit. My mother passed when I was 22, just after I enlisted. That's when Aunt Barbara entered the picture. Mom's older sister, who'd been estranged for years over some family drama I never fully understood. She showed up at the funeral, all tears and regret, promising to be there for me. "Your mother would want family to look after family," she'd said, clutching my hands. "I know we had our differences, but you're all I have left of her." I was grieving and about to deploy for the first time. Having family seemed better than having no one. I should have paid attention to how her eyes inventoried Mom's jewelry during the service. For 10 years, Aunt Barbara played the role of caring aunt when it suited her. She'd call before holidays, when she needed money. Visit when I was stateside, when she needed a place to crash. Express interest in my life, when she wanted to know my deployment schedule. The storage unit became necessary when I made surgeon and faced longer deployments. I couldn't keep dragging collections from base to base, and base housing wasn't secure enough for items now worth serious money. I rented a climate-controlled unit in Houston, installed my own security camera system, and spent weeks organizing everything. The comic collection alone had grown to over 3,000 issues, including a near-mint Amazing Fantasy number 15, Spider-Man's first appearance. I bought from an old man whose kids didn't want his funny books. The sports cards filled 40 boxes, organized by year and condition. The military collection had expanded to include items from every major American conflict, each piece researched and authenticated. I documented everything. Photos of each item, receipts when I had them, authentication certificates for the valuable pieces, all backed up to 3 different cloud services because I'd learned redundancy in the Army. The total insured value, $2.3 million. "Why do you waste money on this junk?" Barbara asked when she helped me move boxes. "You could be investing in real estate or the stock market." "This is my investment," I explained, showing her a graded comic that had appreciated 400% in 5 years. "And its history. Grandpa's medals." "Our old war stuff," she interrupted. "Marcus, honey, you need to think about your future. What woman is going to want a man who hoards old papers?" I stopped sharing my collecting passion with her after that. She was on my storage unit access list only for emergencies. If something happened to me, someone needed to know the value of what was there. I specifically told the storage facility manager that she could enter only with my written permission or death certificate. Before this deployment, something felt off. Barbara was too interested in my schedule, too eager to be helpful. 6 months in Kuwait? That's so long. "Let me help with anything you need," she offered. "Storage unit payments? Mail? I'm here for you." "Everything's on autopay," I told her. "But thanks." I even called the storage facility. "I'm updating my access list. Please remove Barbara Webb. No one enters without my explicit permission." "Understood, Sergeant Webb. We've made the notation." I deployed feeling secure. My collections were safe, insured, and inaccessible. I focused on my mission, leading my squad, staying alive. Barbara sent supportive emails about how proud she was, how she was praying for my safety. Standard aunt stuff that I appreciated from 7,000 miles away. Then, 4 months into deployment, the email came. "Hey sweetie. Hope you're staying safe. Vito, I did you a huge favor. Cleaned out that storage unit full of all that old junk. You won't believe how much I got done in just one weekend. The Goodwill guys said it was the biggest donation they'd ever received. You can thank me when you get home. Now you won't waste money on that expensive unit anymore. Love, Aunt Barb." My hands shook as I read it again. And again. Surely she was joking. She had to be joking. I called the storage facility immediately, despite it being 3 a.m. Kuwait time. "Sergeant Webb." "Yes, ma'am. Your aunt came by with written authorization from you. Email dated last month, stating you wanted the unit cleared due to financial constraints. She had movers and everything." "What email? I never sent any email." "Sir, it came from your military email address." My blood ran cold. I'd made one mistake: letting Barbara use my laptop during my pre-deployment leave to check Facebook. She must have accessed my saved passwords, sent the email, then deleted it from my sent folder. Did you verify? Call me? Anything? The email said you'd be unreachable on mission and to deal only with your authorized representative, Ms. Webb. She was on your previous access list, so I hung up and immediately filed for emergency leave. Then I called my insurance company, my lawyer, and finally Barbara. Oh, you got my email. Isn't it wonderful? That unit was costing you $300 a month, and all that junk was just collecting dust. That junk was worth $2.3 million, I said quietly. Silence. Then, what? No. It was just old papers and toys, including Grandpa's Medal of Honor. The one he earned saving 3 men's lives. The one you threw in the garbage. Medal of? Marcus, I didn't. You're exaggerating. It couldn't be worth. I'm landing in Houston in 12 hours. Do not move. Do not leave your house. We need to talk. But first, I had work to do. My lawyer had already started the insurance claim. My documentation was impeccable. Photos of every item, detailed inventories, authentication papers. The storage facility's security footage showed Barbara directing movers to throw everything into trucks. She'd even signed receipts at Goodwill, creating a paper trail of her destruction. When I arrived at the storage unit, Agent Martinez from the FBI was already there. Insurance fraud over $1 million triggered federal involvement, especially when it involved active military personnel. Sergeant Webb, we've reviewed your documentation. This is one of the most thoroughly cataloged collections I've ever seen. He showed me his tablet with my photos, every comic book individually photographed and graded. Military items with full provenance. Authentication certificates for everything valuable. You were meticulous. I'm a soldier, sir. Attention to detail keeps you alive. It's also going to help us prosecute your aunt. She's already admitted to accessing your email without authorization and forging the clearance letter. That's identity theft, wire fraud, and destruction of property over $1 million. All federal crimes. When we arrived at Barbara's house, she'd clearly been crying. Marcus, thank God you're here. This is all a misunderstanding. Ma'am, Agent Martinez interrupted. I need to inform you that you're under investigation for federal crimes. You have the right to an attorney. Barbara's tears turned to rage. Federal crimes? For cleaning out junk? Marcus, tell them. Tell them what? That you hacked my email? That you destroyed a collection I spent 20 years building? That you threw away Grandpa's medals that honored his service while his family was in internment camps? I didn't know. Because you never asked. You never cared. You saw boxes and assumed trash because it wasn't something you could wear or show off. Agent Martinez pulled out photos from Goodwill's security cameras. Ma'am, can you explain why you told the donation center that your nephew was a hoarder who needed tough love? Barbara went pale. I was trying to help. By specifically waiting until he was deployed and couldn't stop you. He showed another document. We have your text messages to your friend Linda. Finally got into that storage unit. Going to teach my nephew a lesson about wasting money on garbage. He'll thank me when he sees how much I'm saving him. The investigation revealed everything. Barbara had been planning this for months. She'd researched how to access military email, waited until I was deployed, and systematically destroyed everything. What she hadn't counted on was the documentation, the insurance, or federal investigators who took destruction of military personnel property very seriously. The Goodwill had sold some items before I could recover them. My amazing fantasy number 15 went to a dealer for $50 who flipped it for $45,000 within a week. Some military items ended up in an antique shop. But the damage was done. 20 years of careful collecting destroyed in a weekend. Why? I asked Barbara during one of the depositions. What did you gain? She couldn't meet my eyes. I thought if you didn't have all that junk tying you down, you'd invest in something sensible. Maybe help family who needed it instead of hoarding old papers. There it was. She'd see my collection as money that should have been hers. Every dollar spent on junk was a dollar not available for her to borrow and never repay. The federal case was straightforward. Barbara pled guilty to avoid trial, wire fraud, identity theft, and destruction of property. The judge, a veteran himself, was particularly unsympathetic to someone who targeted deployed military. Ms. Webb, you didn't just destroy property, you destroyed history. Military medals that honored sacrifice. First edition comics that brought joy to generations. Sports cards that connected fathers and sons. And you did it out of greed and ignorance, targeting your nephew while he served his country overseas. She got 18 months in federal prison and was ordered to pay full restitution, $2.3 million she didn't have. Her house, car, and retirement accounts were seized. She'd spend the rest of her life paying me back. The storage facility's insurance covered some losses, as did my personal policy. Combined with the restitution order, I'll eventually recover financially. But some things can't be replaced. Grandpa's medals are gone forever. The comics I'd hunted for years vanished. Each item had a story, a memory attached. I've started collecting again slowly. Other veterans have reached out, offering pieces from their collections to help rebuild mine. A comic shop owner who bought some of my issues from Goodwill returned them at cost when he heard the story. The military collecting community especially rallied. Grandpa's unit insignia was rebuilt through donations from other 442nd families who understood the history's importance. Barbara writes from prison sometimes. Apologies mixed with justifications, requests for forgiveness wrapped in subtle asks for money. I don't respond. Some things, once broken, can't be fixed with sorry. My new storage unit has better security, biometric locks, 24/7 monitoring, and no family on the access list. The collection grows slowly but surely. Each piece is still documented, photographed, backed up to the cloud that saved me once before. And sometimes, late at night in the barracks, I pull up those photos on my laptop. Not for the monetary value, though seeing that Mickey Mantle card still hurts, but for the memories. Each item was a moment in time, a piece of history saved from being forgotten. That's what Barbara never understood. It was never about the money. It was about preservation, connection, honoring the past while building a future. She saw junk where I saw stories. She saw waste where I saw investment, not just financial, but cultural, historical, personal. The investigator was right about one thing. I was meticulous. In the Army, we learned that attention to detail isn't just about following orders. It's about being prepared for the unexpected, documenting everything, having contingencies. I just never expected the enemy to be family, or the battlefield to be a storage unit in Houston. But like any good soldier, I adapted, overcame, and rebuilt. The collection grows again, one piece at a time. And somewhere in federal prison, my aunt is learning that one person's junk really can be another's treasure, especially when that treasure is worth $2.3 million and comes with FBI investigators. Lesson learned: always back up to the cloud. You never know when someone might try to delete your life while you're defending your country. Your father's hand was completely limp when I moved it to forge his signature. See, I'm holding his wrist like a puppet. The video showed my brother-in-law Mark manipulating my unconscious father's hand across legal documents, unaware that Nurse Patricia Rivera had been recording everything. But why did she have a detective with her? And what else had her hidden cameras captured during my father's final days? My name is Amelia Chen, and I'm standing in a crowded living room watching my family implode. Just 20 minutes ago, we were gathering to read my father's will. Now my brother-in-law was about to be arrested for fraud, forgery, and elder abuse, all because a hospice nurse decided to become a vigilant. Let me back up 6 weeks. My father, James Chen, was diagnosed with stage 4 pancreatic cancer in January. By March, he was in home hospice care. My older sister Diana and her husband Mark had graciously offered to move into Dad's house to help with his care. "It's the least we can do," Diana had said, tears in her eyes. "He shouldn't be alone." I lived 40 minutes away and visited daily, but I was grateful Diana could be there full-time. Dad's house, a beautiful colonial worth $2.8 million, was big enough for everyone, and he seemed comforted by having family around. Nurse Patricia Rivera started the same week Diana and Mark moved in. She was a quiet, competent woman in her 50s who handled Dad's medications and comfort care with professional grace. "Your father's a fighter," she told me one afternoon, "but you should prepare. Maybe get legal affairs in order." "Everything's already handled," I assured her. Dad updated his will last year. 50-50 split between Diana and me, just like he always promised. Patricia nodded, but seemed troubled. "In the house?" "That's often where complications arise." "Same thing. We'll sell and split the proceeds." She glanced toward the kitchen where Mark was loudly discussing renovation plans on his phone. "I see. Well, if you need anything documented about your father's condition or mental state, just ask." I didn't think much of the comment then. Dad's condition deteriorated rapidly. Within 3 weeks, he was mostly unconscious, responding only occasionally to voices or touch. Diana and I took shifts sitting with him, holding his hand, telling him we loved him. Mark, meanwhile, seemed more interested in the house than Dad's comfort. "This place could be worth $4 million with some updates," he mentioned one day, measuring the kitchen with his phone app. New kitchen, updated bathrooms. Diana and I could really make something special here. "The house will be sold, Mark," I reminded him coldly. "That's what Dad wanted." He shrugged. "Plans change. Diana's the oldest. Dad probably wants her to have the family home." "Dad wants us to split everything equally. He's been very clear." Mark's smile didn't reach his eyes. "We'll see." 2 weeks before Dad died, I arrived for my morning visit to find Mark in Dad's study, going through papers. "What are you doing?" I demanded. "Just organizing," he said smoothly. "Diana asked me to get documents ready. You know, for after." Something felt wrong, but before I could investigate further, Patricia called out that Dad was awake and asking for me. Those final conversations with Dad were precious but heartbreaking. He could barely whisper, but his messages were clear. "Take care of each other. Be fair. Love you both equally." "We will, Dad," I promised. "Diana and I will follow your wishes exactly." He squeezed my hand weakly and drifted back to sleep. Dad passed peacefully on a Tuesday morning, Diana and I both holding his hands. Even Mark seemed genuinely moved, comforting Diana as she sobbed. The funeral was beautiful. Friends and family packed the church, sharing stories of Dad's kindness and generosity. For a brief moment, I thought maybe we could get through this as a family. That illusion shattered 3 days later when Diana casually mentioned, "Oh, by the way, Dad signed the house over to me before he went into the coma." I nearly dropped my coffee. "What?" "He realized it wasn't fair to make me move after taking care of him," she said, not meeting my eyes. "Mark has the paperwork." "Diana, Dad was barely conscious for weeks before he died. How could he sign anything?" "It was during a lucid moment. Mark witnessed it." Red flags everywhere. I immediately called my lawyer, then Dad's lawyer. Neither had heard anything about a property transfer. "Bring me whatever documents they have," Dad's lawyer, William Park, instructed. "If something was signed without my knowledge while your father was incapacitated, that's a serious problem." When I confronted Diana and Mark, demanding to see the documents, Mark produced a folder with flourish. "All perfectly legal," he said smugly. "Property transfer deed, signed and dated 2 weeks ago. I witnessed it myself." I studied Dad's signature. It looked wrong. Shaky in places, too firm in others. "This is forged," I stated flatly. How dare you? Diana gasped. Mark would never. I want a handwriting expert to examine this. Mark's face darkened. You're being ridiculous. Just because Diana gets the house. Because you forged Dad's signature while he was dying. I shot back. The argument escalated until Mark threatened to ban me from the house entirely. I left, but not before taking photos of every document. The next 2 weeks were a blur of lawyers, handwriting experts, and growing fury. The expert confirmed my suspicions. The signature showed signs of being guided or traced, inconsistent with Dad's typical signing pattern. But proving it was another matter. Without witnesses or evidence of his mental state at the time, it's your word against theirs, William explained. Mark says he witnessed a lucid moment. Hard to disprove. I was preparing for a long legal battle when Patricia Rivera called. Miss Chen, I need to speak with you urgently. Can you meet me at the house? Bring your lawyer. Why? What's wrong? I have something you need to see. I'll explain everything, but you'll want legal counsel present. We agreed to meet the next day at 2 p.m., the same time Mark had scheduled the will reading, confident his forged documents would stand. I arrived with William to find the house full of relatives, all gathered for what Mark was calling the official distribution of assets. He'd even hired his own lawyer to oversee it, clearly expecting no challenges. Patricia was already there, sitting quietly in the corner with a stern-looking man in a gray suit. Shall we begin? Mark's lawyer started, but Patricia stood up. Actually, I have something that needs to be addressed first. Mark looked annoyed. Excuse me, who are you? Patricia Rivera. I was James of Hospice Nurse. And this is Detective Robert Morrison from the Elder Abuse Division. The room went silent. Dade signed everything to me before the TOMA. Mark waved the papers desperately. I have the documents right here. Patricia raised her hand calmly. I have 4K video of you moving his unconscious hand. The detective beside her stepped forward, badge visible. Mr. Hutchinson, I'll need you to remain seated. Mark's face cycled through emotions: confusion, fear, rage. This is ridiculous. You can't record patients without consent. Actually, Patricia said, pulling out a tablet, I can, and I did. With both James's and Amelia's consent. I blinked in surprise. My consent. Patricia smiled slightly. 6 weeks ago, when I mentioned documenting your father's condition, you agreed. I had you sign a consent form for continuous monitoring for medical documentation. You probably thought I meant charts and notes. She turned the tablet toward the room. But I meant this. The video was crystal clear. Time-stamped 2 weeks before Dad's death, it showed his bedroom from an angle that captured both his bed and the side table where documents might be signed. There was my father, unconscious and still. And there was Mark, entering with papers and a pen. The audio was damning. Okay, James, Mark said to my comatose father. Time to sign some papers. Don't worry, Diana will take good care of your house. We watched in horrified silence as Mark lifted Dad's limp hand, wrapped the fingers around a pen, and physically moved the hand across the signature line. Your father's hand was completely limp when I moved it to forge his signature. See, I'm holding his wrist like a puppet. Mark's voice narrated his own crime, apparently thinking he was alone. But it got worse. The video continued as Mark practiced Dad's signature on spare papers, comparing them to an old document for reference. Almost got it, he muttered. Just need to make it shakier. There. Patricia paused the video. I have 17 hours of footage showing Mr. Chen's condition during the relevant period. At no point was he conscious enough to sign anything. I also have video of Mr. Hutchinson removing original will documents from the study and replacing them with forgeries. Detective Morrison stepped forward. Mr. Hutchinson, you're under arrest for forgery, elder abuse, fraud, and attempted grand theft. You have the right to remain silent. As they cuffed Mark, Diana finally found her voice. I didn't know. Mark said Dad wanted. He told me Dad asked. There's more, Patricia said quietly, starting another video. This one showed Mark and Diana in the kitchen, discussing their plans. Once we get the house, we can take out loans against it, Mark was saying. Your sister won't fight too hard if we throw her a bone. Maybe $500,000 to go away quietly. Diana's recorded voice responded. But Dad wanted us to split everything. It doesn't feel right. Your dad's not thinking clearly. We're doing him a favor, making sure the house stays in the family. Besides, after everything you've done for him, you deserve it. I guess you're right. The detective looked at Diana. Mrs. Hutchinson, we'll need to speak with you as well. As chaos erupted, relatives shouting, Diana crying, lawyers frantically making calls, I sat down next to Patricia. Why? I asked simply. Why go to all this trouble? Patricia's professional mask slipped, revealing deep anger. I've been a hospice nurse for 30 years. You know how many times I've watched family members rob dying patients, forge documents, steal belongings, manipulate inheritances. She shook her head. Usually I can't prove anything. But your father, he was aware of what was happening. During one of his lucid moments, he asked me to protect you. Said he was worried about Mark but couldn't do anything. Dad asked you to record. He consented to any and all documentation necessary to preserve his true wishes. I interpreted that liberally. She smiled grimly. I've had cameras installed in every room I work in for the past 5 years. Families never notice. They're too focused on what they can take. William, my lawyer, was practically gleeful. This evidence is ironclad. The forged documents are void. The original will stand. And Mark's looking at serious prison time. Over the following days, the full extent of Mark's scheme emerged. He'd forged not just the house transfer, but also documents trying to access Dad's investment accounts. He'd even attempted to change the beneficiaries on Dad's life insurance. All of it caught on Patricia's cameras. Mark was charged with 8 felony counts. Diana, after proving she was largely ignorant of the scheme's extent, received probation for conspiracy. Their marriage didn't survive the scandal. The house sold for $3.1 million. Diana and I split everything equally, just as Dad wanted. She apologized profusely, claiming Mark had manipulated her while she was grieving. Maybe that was true. Maybe not. Trust, once broken, is hard to rebuild. But the real hero was Patricia Rivera, the quiet hospice nurse who'd appointed herself guardian of the dying. I've got 12 active cases right now, she told me over coffee a month later. 3 of them show signs of family members planning something similar. The cameras keep running. Isn't that legally gray? Families sign comprehensive consent forms for monitoring and documentation. They assume it's medical. I never claim otherwise. She shrugged. I've helped expose 15 cases of elder fraud in 5 years. Recovered millions in stolen assets. Sent 6 people to prison. All because you record everything. All because I listen to my patients. The dying see clearly who loves them, who's waiting for them to die, who's already stealing from them. They know. They just can't always fight back. She pulled out a business card. I'm starting a nonprofit. Guardians for the Dying. Training nurses in documentation, providing camera equipment, working with elder abuse prosecutors. Your father's case will help us get funding. I wrote her a check for $100,000 on the spot. Mark got 7 years in federal prison for the forgery and elder abuse. The prosecutor said the video evidence was the clearest case of inheritance fraud she'd ever seen. At sentencing, Mark tried to claim Patricia had entrapped him, that the recordings were illegal, that he was manipulated by grief. The judge wasn't moved. Mr. Hutchinson, she said sternly, you puppeteered a dying man's hand to steal millions from his daughter. The only manipulation here was yours. The fact that someone was smart enough to document your crimes doesn't make you a victim. It makes you a caught criminal. I still have dinner with Patricia occasionally. She updates me on her cases, always anonymized, always professional. But the satisfaction in her voice when she describes catching another would-be thief is unmistakable. Your father would be proud, she told me recently. His case has helped save dozens of other families from the same fate. I think about Dad often, especially his final lucid words asking Patricia to protect me. Even dying, even powerless, he found a way to ensure his wishes were honored. And somewhere out there, Patricia Rivera continues her vigilant watch, cameras rolling, documenting the truth for those who can no longer speak it themselves. The detective beside her had stepped forward that day, ending Mark's scheme. But the real detective was the nurse who'd been investigating all along, hidden in plain sight, protecting the vulnerable one recorded frame at a time. Justice isn't always about courts and lawyers. Sometimes it's a hospice nurse with a hidden camera and the determination to stand guard over those who can no longer stand for themselves.